I knew something was off the second we turned onto the dirt road. The tires crunched over the gravel like they always did. But tonight it sounded sharper, louder, too loud, like the ground was warning us not to come back. It was just past 2 a.m. The headlights cut through the fog like dull blades, barely lighting up the old fence posts that lined the driveway. The woods around us were still, dead still, not a single chirp, rustle, or hum. Even the bugs had gone quiet. And out here, that never happens. I glanced over at my wife, Mara. She was dozing in the passenger seat, head tilted against the window, her blonde hair a mess from the road. In the back, Noah and Ellie were both knocked out, tangled up in blankets and each other. We'd just driven 6 hours home from a cousin's wedding 2 towns over, one of those long overdue family things we finally made time for. I'd been hoping the trip would reset something in us, give us a break. But the second our old farmhouse came into view, that strange, sinking feeling returned. I eased the truck to a stop beside the barn. The porch light was out, which was weird since I always leave it on when we're gone. The house looked dark, lifeless, like it had been sitting there holding its breath the whole time we were away. Mara stirred and sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes. "We home already?" "Yeah," I said. "Go wake the kids, I'll grab the bags." She turned around to unbuckle Ellie. That's when Noah sat up and looked out the window. "Whoa," he said quietly. "Dad, what's wrong with the moon?" I paused with my hand on the door. "What?" "The moon," he said again, pointing past me. "Look." I stepped out of the truck and turned toward the sky. My stomach dropped. There it was, hanging low and massive above the tree line, dark red, almost maroon, like a blood clot smeared across the stars. It didn't look like any eclipse I'd ever seen. I mean, sure, I'd read about blood moons, but this thing looked sick, like it was pulsing, beating almost, and it felt wrong. Not just eerie or beautiful in that creepy way the night sky sometimes is, but wrong, like a warning. "Probably just a lunar eclipse," I muttered, trying to sound casual, but Mara was already standing beside me, staring up at it with a frown. "No," she whispered. "It's not right." The wind blew, light but dry, brushing over my arms like cold breath. Then I noticed the silence again. Total, unnatural silence. No frogs, no cicadas, no crickets. Just the sound of Ellie's little voice behind me. "Daddy, what's wrong with Scout?" I turned so fast I nearly fell off the porch. Our dog, Scout, was standing at the bottom of the steps, facing the truck. At first glance, it looked like he was just waiting for us, like he always did when we came home late. But something was off. He wasn't wagging his tail. He wasn't barking or jumping up like usual. He was stiff, rigid, and his mouth hung open slightly, foam dripping from his jowls. His fur was streaked with something dark and wet. His eyes, usually this warm amber, reflected the porch light in a strange, milky glow. "Scout," I called, stepping down the first step. "Hey, buddy." He growled, a low, gurgling sound that didn't sound like it came from him. It sounded sick, deep, wet. And then he lunged. It happened in a blink. 1 second he was still, the next he was flying at me, teeth bared. I threw myself sideways off the porch, hitting the dirt hard. Scout missed me by inches, landing where I had just been and spinning toward me again, snarling like an animal I didn't recognize. "Get the kids inside," I shouted. Mara grabbed Noah and Ellie and shoved them toward the front door. I scrambled to my feet, heart pounding so hard I thought it would crack my ribs. Scout came at me again, mouth wide. I grabbed the first thing I could reach, an old snow shovel leaning against the steps, and swung. It cracked against his head with a horrible thud. He yelped, staggered back, and then came at me again. I hit him a second time, this one harder. He collapsed to the ground, twitching. I stood over him, breath heaving, shovel still raised. His eyes blinked up at me, blood mixed with the foam at his mouth. He growled weakly, and then he was still. "Ben!" Mara called from the porch, her voice trembling. "What the hell is going on?" I turned toward her, hands still shaking. The kids were inside. Mara stood halfway in the doorway, eyes wide and horrified. "I don't know," I said, almost gasping. "I don't know. He just snapped. He was fine when we left." That's when my phone buzzed in my pocket. And then Mara's did. Then Noah's. A high-pitched, blaring siren erupted from all of them at once, the emergency alert tone. I pulled my phone out and read the screen. "Emergency alert. Do not look at the moon. Do not look at the moon. Stay indoors. Cover windows. Avoid direct exposure. Eyesight contamination confirmed. Repeat. Do not look at the moon." "What the hell does that mean?" Mara asked, staring at her phone. And then all 3 phones went black. Just died. No power, no warning. Dead. I looked back at the moon. It hadn't changed, but now it felt like it was watching us, like it knew we had seen it. My skin prickled. In the distance, deep in the woods behind the house, something let out a noise, a howl. Long, broken, not like a wolf or a coyote, like something imitating one. A few seconds later, another answered, and another, until it sounded like the whole forest was alive and screaming. Then I heard the horses. Inside the barn, there was a wild crashing noise, wood splintering, hooves kicking against walls. Something was slamming itself against the barn doors, over and over, faster and harder each time. I grabbed Mara's hand. "We need to get inside," I said. "Now." And as we crossed the threshold, I couldn't help but glance once more at the moon, just for a second. And I swear, it pulsed. The second I shut the front door, I locked the deadbolt and flipped the latch on the chain. My hands were still shaking. My fingers felt like ice. Mara was already pulling the kids deeper into the house, guiding them into the living room where we could huddle together and think. Ellie clung to her stuffed bear, wide-eyed and quiet, and Noah kept glancing at the windows like he expected something to crash through them at any moment. "What the hell does that alert even mean?" Mara asked again, more frantic now. "Don't look at the moon? What is that supposed to—" "I don't know," I said, cutting her off gently, trying to stay calm even though my brain was screaming. "Maybe something got released in the atmosphere. Radiation. A solar flare? It said eyesight contamination. I've never seen anything like that before." She looked at me like I'd already lost her. "Scout tried to kill you, Ben." "I know. He loved you." "I know." I rubbed the sweat off my forehead and sat down hard on the edge of the couch. My heart still hadn't slowed. The silence outside had turned into something worse now. Not just quiet, but a kind of pressure, like the house was underwater. The only sounds inside were the soft, shaky breaths of our kids and the occasional creak of the old wood settling. "We need to cover the windows," I said suddenly, standing up. "Now. All of them. Blankets, cardboard, anything. The alert said to stay out of direct exposure." "What if we already—" Mara started. I looked, yeah, I admitted. But just for a second. Maybe it takes longer. I still feel like me. She nodded and went to the kitchen to grab tape and scissors. Noah helped me pull down the curtains and hang heavy blankets over the bigger windows. We worked fast, all of us moving like we were trying to outrun a bomb already mid-blast. The house grew darker with every window we sealed. The moon's glow, which had been so faint it barely lit the porch, was now completely shut out. And with it gone, the house felt less alive, like something had been watching, and now that it couldn't see us, it had backed off. For now. Ellie sat in the middle of the room, hugging her bear to her chest. "Is Scout coming back?" I stopped taping a blanket for a second. Mara looked at me. I looked at her. "No, sweetheart," I said finally. Scout went away." Her lower lip quivered, but she didn't cry. I wanted her to cry. It would have felt normal. I heard him talk, she said quietly. That made me pause. What? Scout, she whispered. When he jumped at you, I heard him say my name. Noah's head snapped toward her. Mara dropped the roll of tape. What do you mean, baby? Mara asked carefully, kneeling beside her. Ellie hugged the bear tighter. He said Ellie, just once, but not like a bark, like a word, like he had my voice, like he was me. I didn't know what to say to that. None of us did. Outside, something thumped against the porch. We froze. Another thud, heavier this time, followed by the slow creak of one of the floorboards outside being stepped on. Mara turned off the last lamp. Darkness swallowed the room. Noah crept to the window and pulled back a corner of the blanket just enough to peek outside. His breath caught. What is it? I whispered. There's a man, he said, barely audible, standing in the middle of the yard. My blood ran cold. Does he look hurt? I asked. Is he walking toward the house? No, he's just standing there, looking up at the moon. I moved beside him slowly and looked through the same crack. Sure enough, a man stood dead center in the yard. Jeans, long coat, bare feet, head tilted all the way back like his neck was broken, mouth open, eyes wide, just staring. He's not blinking, Noah whispered. Then suddenly the man twitched, once, like a jolt ran through him. Then his head snapped forward and looked directly at the house, at us. I yanked the curtain shut and stepped back. Stay away from the windows, I hissed. Ellie whimpered, and Mara held her close, her voice low and firm. It's okay, baby. We're safe in here. We're together. We all stood there for what felt like forever, listening for movement, for more footsteps on the porch, for breaking glass or forced locks. But there was nothing. Just the distant sounds again, low growls, some screeches, and the unmistakable sound of wood splintering far off, maybe from another barn or neighbor's shed. The noises didn't feel like they were coming toward us. Not yet. Just circling. When I finally allowed myself to sit again, my hands were still clenched tight around the handle of the fireplace poker I'd grabbed earlier. I hadn't even realized I'd taken it with me. I think we're in the eye of it, I said softly, like the storm hasn't fully hit us yet. Noah looked pale. Do you think it's everywhere? I didn't answer. I didn't want to lie to him. Ellie had finally fallen asleep in Mara's arms, small breaths puffing against her sweater. Mara met my eyes across the room. What do we do, Ben? Just wait it out? I didn't know. That was the worst part. I'm the one who's supposed to have the answers. Fix the pipes, pay the bills, get the oil changed, keep the family safe. But this wasn't a storm. It wasn't a break-in. It was something older, bigger, something we weren't supposed to understand. And then we heard it again. The barn. The horses were screaming, a horrible, wet shriek like they were being torn apart. Then something slammed against the metal doors hard enough to rattle the windows. The whole house shook. We can't stay here, Mara said suddenly, eyes wide. If whatever's out there breaks into the barn and the house is next, we'll be sitting ducks. The truck's right there, I said. We could make a run for it. Noah shook his head. The guy out there is still standing by the truck. Then we wait a few hours, I said. We'll sleep in shifts. If he leaves... The barn exploded. Wood splinters blasted into the night like gunfire. The horses screamed again, then went silent. From the porch, we heard the sound of metal being dragged across concrete. Noah grabbed my arm. He's gone. What? The guy in the yard. He's gone. Just disappeared. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Every hair on my body stood on end. Something heavy slammed against the front door. 1, 2, 3 times. Then silence. We all sat there, frozen in place, and through the boards covering the window we saw it. The moon, glowing faint red around the edges, watching, waiting. None of us moved. The sound was gone, but the pressure wasn't. It was still there, pressing in from all sides like the house was being slowly squeezed by something enormous and invisible. You could feel it in your chest, in your jaw, like the air itself had turned heavy. For a long time, we just listened. Mara clutched Ellie tighter. Noah stood frozen by the window, poker still gripped tight in his hands. I was crouched by the front door, every muscle tensed, like I'd have to fight something off any second. But nothing came. No more slamming. No footsteps. Just silence again. I reached slowly for the shotgun in the cabinet beside the stairs. It hadn't been fired in years, but it was clean, loaded, and ready. I kept it for coyotes. I never imagined I'd be using it to keep whatever the hell this was outside our front door. I pulled Mara aside gently and whispered, "Take the kids into the pantry. It's windowless and solid. Stay there. Lock it behind you." She looked like she wanted to argue but didn't. She nodded, stood, and guided Ellie and Noah toward the back of the house. I watched until they disappeared into the hallway, then turned back toward the door, shotgun in hand. The silence was somehow worse now that I was alone. I pressed my ear against the wood. Nothing. No breathing, no scratching. Whatever had slammed into it, whoever, was gone, or hiding, or waiting. I glanced at the front window where the faint red glow of the moon was still barely visible through the cracks between the boards. "Do not look at the moon," I muttered to myself, repeating the alert like a prayer. Do not look at the moon. But it was hard not to. It drew the eye, like a fire in the dark. You didn't mean to look, you just always ended up staring, even without realizing it. A soft creak echoed above me. I turned my head slowly toward the ceiling. We hadn't checked the attic windows. Another creak. A shuffling noise. Footsteps. Light. Deliberate. Like someone didn't want to be heard. I raised the shotgun and backed away from the door, eyes on the ceiling. I knew every inch of this house. It was built by my grandfather, remodeled by my father, and now mine. I knew the way sound moved through these walls. And that sound, those soft, dragging footsteps, they were in the attic. I crossed the room slowly, careful not to make the floorboards groan, and slipped into the hallway. At the end of it was the pantry. I tapped the door twice. Mara cracked it open. "Something's upstairs," I whispered. "I'm going to check it. Keep the kids in here. Don't make a sound unless it's me." Her eyes widened. "No, Ben, what if I don't go now, it might come down on top of us." She looked at me for a second like she wanted to stop me, then slowly shut the door. I heard the soft click of the lock. I crept toward the attic stairs. The pull-down ladder creaked as it lowered. The attic was always cold, even in summer, but as I climbed, I felt heat coming from above, a strange, heavy warmth that clung to the skin. It smelled like dirt and rot. At the top, I pushed the hatch open and stepped inside. It was pitch black, except for one thin beam of red light slicing through the center of the room, coming from the tiny attic window we'd completely forgotten about. The moonlight bled through like a laser, cutting across boxes and old furniture. In the middle of it stood a boy, small, still, not mine. I froze. He looked about Noah's age, pale, so thin he looked brittle. He was facing the window with his back to me, standing directly in the red beam, arms loose at his sides, his head tilted slightly like he was listening to something no one else could hear. "Hey," I called softly. He didn't move. I stepped closer, keeping the shotgun ready. "You lost, kid?" Still nothing. "Are you okay?" Slowly, his head turned. Not all the way. Just enough that I could see the side of his face. His eye. It glowed faintly red. Then he spoke, but not in a child's voice. I saw it, he whispered, the words raw and broken like he hadn't used his throat in years. It showed me everything. I stopped moving. What showed you? I asked, my voice barely holding steady. His lips curled into a smile. The truth. The moon is not the enemy. It's a mirror. You just don't like what it reflects. I felt my mouth go dry. He stepped forward, into the light fully, and I finally saw his face, cracked skin like old paper, dried blood around his eyes, and something deep inside his pupils, swirling like water in a drain. I didn't hesitate. I raised the shotgun and fired. The blast echoed like a cannon through the attic. The thing, flew backward, crashing through a stack of boxes. I didn't wait to see if it moved again. I ran. Down the ladder, slamming the hatch shut behind me, I bolted to the pantry and unlocked the door. "Get the kids," I said. "We're leaving, now." "What? Why? What happened?" Mara asked, holding Ellie tight. "There's something in the attic, not human. I don't care where that moon came from or what it's doing. We're not staying here to find out what happens next." Noah was already grabbing flashlights and the backpack we used for emergencies. "What about the truck?" Mara asked. I paused. "I don't know. If we can't use it, we run." She stared at me, terrified. "Run? With the kids?" "We don't have a choice." She nodded, eyes welling, but she held it together. We slipped out the back door through the mudroom, flashlights off, crouching low. The red glow of the moon was still leaking through the clouds, but we kept our eyes down, moving fast. The barn was a mess of broken wood and scattered hay. The horses were gone, or what was left of them. Something had torn through the doors like paper. Noah pointed toward the truck. I raised the shotgun again, motioning for them to stay back, and crept forward. The truck was destroyed. Something had smashed the engine block clean in, like it had been stomped on by a giant. The hood was crumpled like tinfoil, and the windshield was completely gone. We weren't driving anywhere. "Shit," I whispered. Mara grabbed my arm. "What now?" "We run," I said. "We take the woods, stick to the creek trail. If we follow it west, we'll hit the highway in 2 hours." Noah looked up, eyes wide. "Dad, what if it's in the woods too?" I looked down at Ellie, who was clutching her bear again. She hadn't said a word. "We stay together," I said. "No matter what, we stay together." And then we heard it again. Voices, dozens of them, whispering, chanting, from the trees, from the fields, from the sky, calling us. And still, above it all, the moon pulsed. We didn't run at first. We just stood there, surrounded by it. The whispers came from everywhere but nowhere at the same time. You couldn't pin them down. Every time you turned your head, they moved, slithered to the other side, like sound itself was circling us. I couldn't tell what they were saying, not exactly. It was too fast, too layered. It was like 1,000 mouths were murmuring at once, in a language not meant to be spoken out loud. Mara pressed Ellie's face into her shoulder, shielding her eyes. Noah clutched my hand, his knuckles bone white. Then suddenly the whispers stopped. The silence was like a slap. Heavy. Too perfect. Then came the scream. It didn't sound human. It tore through the woods with this guttural pitch that made my teeth hurt. Something crashed through the underbrush not far from us, branches snapping, leaves scattering. I didn't hesitate. "Move!" I yelled. "Go! Now!" We turned and bolted into the woods, following the narrow, barely there trail that ran alongside the dry creek bed. I kept one hand on the shotgun and the other on Noah's back, urging him forward. Mara ran just ahead with Ellie clutched tight in her arms. Her legs were bleeding. Branches had torn through her jeans, but she didn't slow down. She didn't even cry out. We ran like animals, fast, blind, just following instinct. Behind us, we heard them. Footsteps, multiple sets, fast. Some light and sharp, like hooves, others heavy, dragging. And voices again, low and rhythmic now, like a chant. Not angry, not excited, just patient, like they knew we couldn't run forever. Noah stumbled over a root, almost fell. I grabbed his arm and yanked him back upright. "You're doing great, buddy," I said, breath ragged. "Just keep going. Don't stop." He nodded, tears in his eyes but not falling. We broke through a thicket and hit a clearing near the old, rusted fence line at the edge of our property. I remembered this place. There used to be an abandoned hunting shack nearby, half collapsed but still standing enough to take cover in. "There," I said, pointing ahead. "Go. That shack. Get inside." We rushed it, Mara kicking the door open with one boot. It clattered against the wall and we tumbled inside, slamming it shut behind us. The place stank of rot and mold. The roof was half caved in, but the walls were still up. A broken cot leaned in one corner, and a rusted stove sat in the other, cold and dead. I pushed a small dresser in front of the door and crouched low, trying to breathe, trying to think. Noah collapsed next to me. Ellie was crying now, soft and muffled into Mara's coat. I didn't blame her. Then I heard something new, a voice crackling through static. At first I thought it was my imagination. Then I realized it was real, faint. Noah heard it too. He turned his head, eyes wide, scanning. "There," he said, pointing to the corner. "Behind that." I crawled toward the back wall and found it, a weathered battery-powered radio tucked inside an old crate. The casing was cracked, but it was still running. The signal faded in and out, buried in static. "Repeat, survivors. If you can hear this, move west. 2 miles. Quarantine checkpoint. Radio contact established. Blood moon containment. Move before sunrise." Then static again. I turned to Mara. "Did you hear that?" She nodded. "Quarantine checkpoint. 2 miles west." "We can make that," I said. "We can cut through the back trails and—" "Wait," Noah interrupted, voice trembling. "Why did it say blood moon containment? What does that mean?" I looked at him. I think this isn't everywhere. Maybe it's local. Maybe it's tied to something in the ground or the sky here. The alert said not to look at the moon. Maybe it triggers something in people, in animals. Whatever's happening, it's connected to that thing." He swallowed hard. "But you looked." "I know. Are you going to turn into one of them?" Mara flinched. "I don't know," I said, and that was the honest truth. "But I'm still here now, and I'm not going to let anything happen to you." Another crash outside. A figure slammed against the shack wall, hard enough to shake the whole frame. Dust fell from the ceiling. Then a second hit. The wood splintered. "We have to move," Mara said. "Now." I looked at the shack window. The moon was out of sight. Clouds had moved in, thick and heavy, dulling the glow just enough to buy us a window. A literal one. "Noah," I said, turning to him, "do you remember that hill trail near the old ravine?" "Yeah. Think you can lead us?" He nodded. "Then take your sister. Mara, you go behind them. I'll follow. But I've got the shotgun. I'll be fine." She nodded once. No time for arguing now. We busted out the side window. Glass shattered everywhere. Noah climbed through first, then Mara with Ellie. I went last, landing in the dirt just as something roared behind us and shoulder-slammed the door off its hinges. I didn't look back. We ran, through tangled brush, over mossy rocks, between trees that clawed at our clothes. It was like the forest had come alive, grabbing at us, trying to hold us in. Something darted through the trees beside us. I caught a glimpse. A deer. Only its eyes were glowing, and its jaw hung too low, broken and flapping as it ran. A trail of blood smeared the leaves behind it. Ellie screamed. "Keep going!" I shouted. Ahead, I saw the trailhead, the start of the ravine path. If we followed it and didn't stop, we'd hit the road by sunrise. That was the plan. That was all we had. But the forest had other ideas. Noah stopped short. "The bridge!" I caught up and saw it. The old footbridge that crossed the ravine had collapsed. Only a few planks and ropes dangled on either side. The drop was steep, maybe 20 feet down. "No choice," I said. "We climb." One by one we slid down the muddy slope, grabbing roots and rocks. Mara slipped halfway and I caught her wrist before she could fall. Ellie clung to Noah like her life depended on it, and maybe it did. We hit the bottom and started climbing the far side. Halfway up, a sound stopped us cold. A groan, then a word. "Noah!" He turned, eyes wide. It was a woman's voice. "Noah, it's me. Come back." He froze. "Noah, don't," I snapped. "But that sounded like—" "It's not your mother," I said, my voice sharp. "She's right here." He looked up at Mara, then down into the shadows. Another voice came. "Ellie." Higher pitched, younger, like her own. "I'm scared. Help me." Ellie whimpered and buried her face into Mara's chest. "Just keep climbing," I said. "They're trying to pull us in." We reached the top and broke through the trees just as the first hint of sunlight touched the sky, gray and faint but real. The moon was still up but fading, retreating behind thick morning clouds. And in the distance, across the last field, we saw them. Flashlights, movement, voices calling out, people, soldiers, a checkpoint. We were almost there. But then Mara gasped. I turned. She was staring at me, pale as death. And then I saw it, a bite mark, on my wrist, small, from Scout. For a moment, no one spoke. We stood at the tree line, breathless, bruised, and barely standing. The checkpoint was less than 100 yards ahead, tents, floodlights, soldiers waving in the last few stragglers from the woods. A convoy of military trucks waited near the road, ready to evacuate whoever made it in time. But Mara wasn't looking at the checkpoint. She was looking at me. Her eyes were locked on my wrist, where my sleeve had pulled back just enough to reveal the dark, half-healed bite. It wasn't bleeding anymore, but the skin was bruised purple around the edges, the shape of Scout's teeth clearly visible like a signature. I pulled the sleeve down quickly, but it was too late. Noah had seen it too. Ellie was still clutching Mara, eyes closed, too tired to notice. Maybe it was better that way. Mara's voice came out like sandpaper. "How long have you known?" "I didn't," I said. "Not really. I didn't feel it until earlier, when we were running. I hoped, maybe it didn't break the skin. Ben," I looked her dead in the eyes, "I'm still me. You know that. I haven't changed." "You don't know that," she said, and now her voice cracked. "We don't know what this is, what it does. What if it's inside you already? What if you get there and they won't let us in? What if they shoot you on sight? What if they separate us?" She was shaking now. Noah was standing behind her, frozen, waiting for someone to decide what to do. His eyes were locked on me, but he wouldn't say anything. He didn't want to choose sides. I swallowed hard. My throat felt like it was closing. "They'll help us," I said, though I wasn't sure if I believed it. "They have to. That's what quarantine's for, right? To help people before it gets worse." "They're soldiers, Ben," Mara said. "This isn't a hospital. This is containment." I looked down the hill again, toward the checkpoint. One soldier spotted us and raised his hand, shouting something. He waved us forward. There was still time. I turned back to my family. "You're right," I said quietly. "They might separate us. They might not let me on the truck. But you and the kids, you can make it. You can get out." Mara's jaw clenched. "I'm not leaving you behind. You might not have a choice." A noise behind us made us all spin, rustling in the trees, then a thump, something heavy landing on the forest floor, another groan, low and dragging. They were close again. We didn't have time. I looked at Noah. "Take your sister. Run. Get to the checkpoint. Don't stop. Don't look back. Just go. Dad, go. Mara stepped forward. I'm not letting you stay here alone. I pressed the shotgun into her hands. Then take this. If I change, if something happens, you protect them. Promise me. Her hands trembled as she took the weapon. Her eyes were wet but locked on mine. Promise me, I said again. She nodded. Once. I promise. I kissed her forehead, then knelt and pulled Ellie into my arms. She hugged me tight without a word. I could feel her heart pounding like a rabbit's. I kissed the top of her head. Then I turned to Noah. You're the man now, all right? You watch out for them. Keep your head. You can do this. His lip trembled, but he nodded. I will. Good. I gave him a quick squeeze, then stood and turned toward the trees. More movement now, branches cracking, growling. And that low chant again, just under the breath of the forest. They were circling, closing in. I took off running, not toward the checkpoint, but toward the sound. Behind me, I heard Mara call out my name once. Then silence. Then footsteps retreating fast in the other direction. Good. They were going. I ran into the woods like a man possessed, making as much noise as I could, snapping branches, shouting, throwing rocks. Anything to draw them away, to be the louder flame in the dark. Shapes moved in the shadows, fast and twitching, limbs that bent wrong, faces that weren't really faces anymore. Some crawled, some dragged themselves forward like they didn't know they were supposed to stop. Their mouths moved but made no sound, just open, slack, chewing at the air. One of them, an old man I recognized from town, Mr. Harris, lunged from behind a tree. I swung a branch and knocked him off balance, but he got up too quickly, too fluid, like something inside him didn't care about the body it was using. They started to surround me. I grabbed a flare from my belt, one I'd taken from the truck kit, and cracked it. The red light hissed and burst to life, burning bright in the darkness. The creatures backed away, hissing, shrieking, covering what was left of their eyes. I held the flare high and turned in a slow circle. "Come on!" I shouted. "I'm right here!" They didn't run, but they stopped. Every last one of them turned their faces toward me. Not angry, not hungry, just empty. Then one by one, they began to kneel. Even the animals, feral dogs, deer with twisted limbs, a fox with half its face missing, they all lowered their heads toward the ground, as if in reverence or worship. The flare flickered, the ground beneath me vibrated, just slightly, and above, the clouds parted again. The moon stared down, and in that moment, I felt it. Something, like a wave of heat through my chest. Not pain, worse, recognition, like it had been waiting for me, like it knew me, like it had left something behind when Scout bit me, and now it was waking up. I dropped to one knee. I couldn't stop myself. The flare hit the dirt beside me and sizzled out. The last thing I remember clearly was a voice, not my own, whispering inside my skull. It's not infection, it's invitation. Then everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I was sitting on a stretcher. Soldiers were all around. Someone was shining a light in my face. I blinked. My mouth was dry. My ears rang. Mara was beside me holding Ellie. Noah was standing close, both hands clenched around the strap of his backpack. They were all staring at me like I was a ghost. "Where?" I tried to speak, but my throat barely worked. "You made it," a soldier said. "Passed out just before the checkpoint. They found you about 20 feet out, alone. No sign of contamination." I looked at Mara. She didn't speak. But her eyes, they were full of questions and doubt. Another soldier appeared with a clipboard. "We're moving survivors to the next facility, full quarantine. Blood moon zone sealed. You're safe now." I looked down at my hands. The bite was gone. No scar, no bruise, like it had never been there at all. I didn't say anything. I just sat there, breathing slow, staring at the smooth skin where the bite had been. clean, unmarked, like it never happened. But I remembered the pain, the pressure, the heat as it spread. I remembered the flare in my hand, the way the creatures bowed, and how that voice, whatever it was, had curled inside my skull like smoke. It's not infection, it's invitation. The words echoed in my head again, louder now, not just a memory, a presence. Mara was still sitting beside me, holding Ellie close. The little one had finally fallen asleep in her arms, her face buried in Mara's jacket. Noah stood off to the side, quiet, but I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his eyes kept flicking between me and the soldiers. They were watching me too. They didn't say it, but I could feel it. The way one soldier kept his hand hovering near his holster. The way they kept the med tent slightly separated from the others, like they weren't convinced I was clean either. One of the medics returned with a small scanner. "Sorry," he said, trying to sound casual. "Just standard protocol for anyone who came from the interior zone." I didn't argue. I extended my arm. He pressed the device against my skin. It beeped softly, then flashed green. "All good," he said. "No anomalies. You're cleared." I nodded. "Thanks." He moved on to the next survivor without another word. Mara finally looked at me, really looked. Her eyes scanned my face for signs, anything. Fear, anger, confusion. But I gave her nothing, because the truth was I didn't know what was real anymore. I didn't feel sick. I didn't feel different. But something inside me had changed, and whatever it was quiet now, too quiet. "We're alive," she whispered, almost like she was trying to convince herself. I nodded again. "Do you remember what happened?" she asked. "Some," I lied. I didn't tell her about the kneeling, about the voice, about how I felt calm right before I blacked out, like I was exactly where I was supposed to be, because the truth wouldn't make her feel safer. Across the field, another transport truck was loading up. A soldier waved in our direction. "You're up! Next evac to Zone 4! We stood, stretching stiff legs and helping Ellie wake gently. She was groggy, but okay. Noah helped Mara gather the few supplies we had left. I picked up the backpack and slung it over my shoulder. My hands didn't shake. My breathing stayed even. I felt fine. We boarded the truck with a dozen other survivors, most of them scratched, bruised, sleep-deprived. A few had bloodstains on their clothes, but none were bleeding anymore. We sat near the back. The engine rumbled, and the heavy doors slammed shut behind us. Mara sat on my left, Noah on my right, Ellie across our laps. The truck lurched forward. We rode in silence for a long while, the road bumpy beneath us, the sky shifting from red to gold as the sun began to rise for real. The blood moon had vanished beneath the horizon, finally gone. But the aftertaste of it lingered in the air, thick, metallic, like ozone and rot. One of the soldiers sitting near the front spoke into a radio, his voice low but serious. I caught a few words. Containment perimeter secured. Zone stabilized. Anomaly not spreading. I leaned back against the metal wall and closed my eyes. It wasn't over. I knew that. You could quarantine a place, fence it off, scrub the topsoil, bulldoze the trees, burn the evidence. But the thing, whatever woke under that red moon, it had already touched too many, and some of those people would lie about it. Some wouldn't even know. Some, like me, would carry the silence with them like a second shadow, because it didn't just infect the body. It whispered. It offered. And some of us, we listened. The truck slowed after an hour, then stopped. Through the back doors we could hear voices, orders being given, tents being moved. One by one we were ushered out and into the open. A new compound, surrounded by fences and floodlights. Clean, organized, military efficient. They handed us new clothes, checked us again, asked questions. Too many questions. But we answered them all. Name, age, exposure time, physical symptoms. I gave them the version that would keep my family together. No, I didn't look directly at the moon. No, I wasn't bitten. Yes, I heard the alert. Yes, I followed instructions. Yes, I feel normal. They believed me. Eventually, they assigned us to a small trailer. 3 beds, a table, clean water. It was more than most had. We stayed there for the next 3 nights. The dreams came on the second. I didn't tell Mara, but I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat, heart racing. The dream was always the same. Me standing in the middle of our field, moonlight pouring over the ground like syrup. Everything quiet. Too quiet. Then the soil begins to move. Fingers pushing up through the dirt. Faces pressing out from under the ground like plastic wrap. And all of them are whispering in unison. "You open the door." I always wake before they reach me, but it's getting closer. Each night, they get closer. On the 3rd morning, I found Noah sitting on the steps outside our trailer, staring at the sky. The moon was gone. Sunlight was bright and clean. "You okay?" I asked, sitting beside him. He nodded slowly. Then he said, "Dad, when you were in the woods, when you stayed behind, did something happen to you?" I paused. I looked at my son, this kid who had just watched his entire world twist itself inside out, who hadn't cried once, who had protected his sister without flinching. He deserved the truth. But I didn't have it. Not really. "I don't know," I said. "Maybe." He nodded again. We sat in silence for a while. Then he said, "I think it's not over." I looked at him. He didn't blink. He wasn't scared, just sure. "Why?" He pointed to the ground. At the edge of the concrete, just past the gravel path, a small patch of earth had begun to crack. Dry dirt, thin lines, like something underneath was pushing up. And right there, in the middle, was a single print. Not a shoe, not a paw, a hand pressing up, like it was reaching, waiting, invited. I put my arm around his shoulders, pulled him close, and we sat there watching it. And for the first time, I didn't feel fear. I felt familiar,